most exciting and dramatic movement of many requiems is the Dies Irae. The latter text, written in rhyming verse, tells of the day of wrath, fire, hell, trumpets sounding, the souls of the dead rising. My name is Anthony Harris, and I'm a member of the Rebel Chorus and the Salvation Army. Music has always helped Salvationists make their own way along the path to redemption, and the impending Judgment Day has inspired some of the most exquisite pieces in the classical canon. Never more than in the Victorian era, when death became grand, epic. Perhaps the Victorians realised they could control most things, build machines, great bridges, new means of transport, but they couldn't stop people from dying.
The Victorian city was expanding at an incredibly rapid rate. This really created enormous problems, and really from the beginning of the 1830s, one of the big killer diseases that struck the city was cholera. It would strike down the wealthy and the poor, and it was really the wealthy that could take action to actually try to change the city. For instance, the new cemeteries around the edge of the city were part of this new kind of improvement because all the cemeteries were full.
Known as the Magnificent Seven, the extra space in these new graveyards appealed to the showy, death-obsessed Victorians. Gravestones became tombs, vaults, catacombs, and spectacular memorials. Death had become an industry.
Well, the urn is usually the ashes, symbolising that. This cemetery has quite a few areas of ivy because the Victorians loved ivy. If you look very carefully, you will see it's got the Grim Reaper, and he's got a very large scythe cutting down a tree. It will be an oak tree, which means life. And when you read the memorial, you will see that it's a young man that's been cut down in his early 20s.
Victorian sensibility at times verges on the comic. Here in Postman's Park, there's a wall of plaques that mark death in ever more unfortunate heroic circumstances. There's a man over there who died from being run down by a runaway train, someone else who drowned saving young boys from an icy pond on Hampstead Heath. But over here is Sarah Smith, a pantomime artist at the Prince's Theatre who died of terrible injuries whilst attempting, in her inflammable dress, to extinguish the flames that enveloped her companion. But the quote that made its way into the London Requiem is of Solomon Galliman, aged 11, who died while saving his brother from being run down on Commercial Street.
Mother, I saved him, but I couldn't save myself. Mother, I saved him, but I couldn't save myself.
Yet, in the midst of this Victorian sentimentality, emerged a religious force with real charitable clout, the Salvation Army.
For the last time, he leaves the Army headquarters in Queen Victoria Street.
This week is the centenary of its founder's death. Just look at the impact General William Booth's funeral had on the streets of London.
William Booth was a very fiery revivalist preacher, called to an itinerant preaching ministry. That couldn't be accommodated in the church, so some folk would say he went freelance. He eventually met up with a group that was called the Christian Mission. They were holding an open-air meeting in the East End of London, and from that point onward he became the leader. He was a dynamic leader, he was an original thinker, and so he attracted a creative and equally fiery following.
100 years ago, the throngs who came to watch Salvation Army bands and the funeral cortege were as great as for any state occasion. And where were they heading? To Abney Park Cemetery. resting place of many nonconformists, one of the Magnificent Seven and the venue for the live premiere of the London Requiem in September. For a man so attuned to the spiritual importance of music, I feel General Booth would have approved.